California's massive Caldor wildfire burning near South Lake Tahoe is gaining ground on the popular resort community. Overnight, it expanded to more than 320 square miles, an area larger than New York City. Officials estimate the fire has burned more than 207,000 acres across 2 counties and is only 23% contained. CBS News correspondent Carter Evans has an update.
The Caldor Fire is pushing east toward the Nevada state line over terrain so dry and dangerous, officials say they may be forced to let it burn for miles.
This is some steep, rugged, nasty country, and it's just not safe in a lot of it to put our firefighters up there in that stuff.
Many of the more than 4,200 firefighters attacking this blaze have now been working nonstop for 19 straight days, using everything from helicopter water drops to bulldozers and hand tools. So far, they've been able to keep the flames away from South Lake Tahoe, partly by lighting backfires and clearing brush to slow the fire's advance. The wind's picking up right now, but this fire is actually backing down the hill, and that's what firefighters want to see. A big concern, though, are dead trees like this one. If this were to catch fire, it could fall across the fire break they've built, endangering homes on the other side. As flames now approach the Nevada state line, the threatened Heavenly Ski Resort is being transformed into a base camp for firefighters.
There's a lot of work to be done down here, a lot of threats still down here with these small spot fires that are still burning down here.
For Battalion Chief Dave Lochner, the battle is personal. He's in danger of losing his parents' cabin.
Fatigue has to come into play. You've been on this fire since the beginning.
Yeah, there are days where we're exhausted, but that's the job. We're ready to go, and we push through it. We're here till the end.
One setback for firefighters, an entire strike team of 16 people is sidelined now because of a COVID outbreak. Here in California, Governor Newsom is asking President Biden for an emergency declaration so they can get federal assistance in fighting this fire. Carter Evans, CBS News, near Lake Tahoe.
To talk more about this, I'd like to bring in fire historian Steve Pyne. He's also the author of the Pyrocene and a professor emeritus at Arizona State University. Professor Pyne, welcome. So many fire crews around the West are saying they've never seen anything like what they are dealing with this summer. What is different about this year?
Well, I mean, we have 2 extraordinary fires, the Dixie and Caldor, which have now spanned the Sierra Nevada. And are essentially unstoppable until rain, snow, or the wind stop. So, but what's remarkable, I think, is that in the past, California has always had breaks between major fires, 3, 5, 8 years. The fires would occur in the north or the south. Most of the worst would occur in fall winds, Santa Anas or Diablos. And now we're seeing this is the 5th consecutive year of serial conflagrations. There is no break. And we're starting to see the various contributing factors interacting in ways that are aggravating the fire.
So what are the long-term sort of results of that? When you say you have these big fires every year now, the landscape, the vegetation, the wildlife, all of these things don't have a chance to recover, correct? So what are the long-term implications if this continues on a yearly basis? And frankly, it seems like there's nothing stopping that, correct?
Well, not in the largest sense. I mean, we have to recognize that burned area is an impressive statistic and it complicates firefighting, but not all of the fire effects are going to be negative. Some may actually be positive. That sounds macabre when we've got communities threatened, and I'm not talking about that part of it, but other parts may be actually beneficial. So it's a mixed bag, but what we're seeing, I think, is fires at this scale catalyzing a new landscape that's going to come into being. And that new landscape will probably be more fire prone than what it replaced. Fire will continue to adjust and make a place more favorable to itself. So I think we're looking at a long-term history of fire. California is a place built to burn. We're going to see fires going to places that have not experienced California levels of fires before. I mean, in the largest sense, I think when you add up all the things we're doing with fire, including fossil fuels, we're creating the fire equivalent of an ice age. and we need to think about the future at that.
Sorry to interrupt, but just can you explain a little bit further what's beneficial to the landscape about these fires? I mean, I understand you're saying it's not obviously beneficial to the human structures and the towns and the cities, but in terms of the natural landscape, what is beneficial about the fires?
Well, many of these landscapes have adapted to fire. They expect it, in some cases even need it, but they need fires of a particular character. And very few of what we're seeing burning now is adapted to a high severity fire that simply scours things. And that's a lot of what we get in the visuals because it's most dramatic. But you're showing landscapes now where fire is backing through. It's cleaning out the forest floor. It's making habitat probably more favorable to grasses and flowers. It may be reducing a lot of the accumulated fuel in ways that are not destroying the forest or the capacity of that landscape to rebuild itself. So it's going to be mixed.
Interesting. But what about the air quality? Aren't there long-term negative effects to the air quality?
Well, there certainly are, but as with almost everything with fire, there's good and bad. I mean, we've learned a lot about smoke. Again, perhaps bizarrely to most minds, having useful ecological effects, often a stimulant to germination, a way of fumigating forests, helping to contain some diseases and insect outbreaks. So it's not all negative. Certainly for people living in chronic smoke environments, this is not good. We had lots and lots of smoke throughout the American West during the settlement period, and we've got lots of records of it. The years, sort of the mid-20th century, are not, in a sense, the norm for smoke, but it was seasonal, it was mild. What we're seeing now are these immense smoke palls. It's really as though the Dust Bowl has returned, but in this case, with smoke. These are not healthy. It's hard to see them doing any good. So the question is, fire and smoke are going to happen. The question is, how do we want it? Under what conditions? With what kinds of controls? With what kinds of mitigations and potential adaptations can we make to it? The idea that fire is just sort of this episodic visitation that comes at a particular season from time to time, and we can do it on the side. We can manage it as a sort of side activity. I think those days are long gone. We need to be thinking systematically about dealing with fire and all of its ramifications.
Fascinating talking to you, a fire expert, about all the various facets of fire and the way it can forge, as you say, a new landscape. The question is, what needs to change about how officials deal with the wildfires?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's the fundamental question. Over a decade ago, Congress mandated that the fire community create a national cohesive strategy, try to get all the pieces to line up. And they came up with 3 recommendations, and one was fire-adapted communities. It's ridiculous that we have our settlements and towns threatened by fire. We fixed urban fire a long time ago, and we've forgotten how to do it. We know how to fix that. The second part was to get our landscapes more resilient to fire so that we can get more good fire, less bad fire. We can get the ecological benefits that we need out of those landscapes without having them trashed by the wrong kind of fire. And the third part was simply to create the capacity to apply it. And I would add to that the need to get a handle on climate change, because it will override all the other mitigations we can do if we don't begin to wrestle that into some kind of manageable form.
So necessary and not easy to do. Professor Steve Pyne, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your insight and all your knowledge about fire. I found this a fascinating conversation. Thank you. Tonight, CBSN will stream the feature-length documentary Bring Your Own Brigade, the award-winning film by 2-time Oscar-nominated director Lucy Walker, and Topic Studios will take viewers on a journey into the heart of California's raging wildfires and explore the causes and solutions to this global crisis. You can stream that right here tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern.